You were born into this world with everything you need. Hold on to your heart, the magic starts the moment you believe. Nothing is impossible. Dreams are made to fly. When you blow by every obstacle and move like you're unstoppable, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. You were born to shine. When you blow by every obstacle and move like you're unstoppable, nothing is impossible. I feel like I'm undressing, taking my mask off. Good morning. I'm Mary Gabrielson, the minister here at Unity Center, Milwaukee. It is my pleasure and joy to welcome you once again to our Sunday celebration. I want to remind you that if you are not able to watch us live right at 10 o'clock, the program is also on YouTube and will be on our website as well. So you can go back and watch it later. Some of us need a little more sleep on Sunday mornings. Let's begin our time together with our statement of faith. There's only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, God the good, omnipotence. And the affirmation for our center. Thank you, God, that we've come to this place to release the past, celebrate the present, and embrace the future in love, peace, harmony, and prosperity. This is our prayer for racial healing, and we really believe in the power of prayer and the synergy that is so much greater than the sum of people praying when we pray together. Together, we are here because we care. We are here because you care. We are here because I care. Let me be the peace and act the peace. Let us move our hearts to the highest and best of us and focus on racial healing for self, others, and the world in unity and through the name of Christ. Amen. This is the opportunity in our celebration when we lift up prayer requests from those that are made by people in our spiritual congregation and also by others outside. Let me just put this aside. So let's just come together in the stillness of peace and the stillness of prayer. We unify our minds with divine mind, God mind. We acknowledge the indwelling, pervasive presence and power of God, connecting with and including one another. We become one voice, one message, uplifting the world in prayer. And we begin with the thought of oneness. So this is a prayer for the pandemic, for all of us that are living through this most interesting and unusual time. We are being reminded that God is in the midst of all and in charge. We remain aware and reawaken the God presence in each of us and within all humanity. The wholeness of the planet is being called forth to birth greater good. We are invited to fast from fear and to feast on courage and divine intelligence to survive and thrive with a consciousness of love for all humanity. And so it is. And for peace of mind, the indwelling Spirit of God expresses light, life, love, power, and peace. The peace of God satisfies me, and I experience a joy of living. For comfort, God's loving mercy and kindness enfold me like a gentle hug. I am enveloped in comfort and compassion. I am able to relax and rest and lean into God. I feel peace and a quiet power that fills me now. I can move forward with confidence to do what is mine to do. And for healing, the Lord of my being blesses me with wholeness. I am strengthened and renewed. For success, all is well because all is God. The power of God is working in and through me to accomplish and achieve, and I do succeed. For overcoming, I persevere and prevail. Divine power within sustains me and drives me forward. I am greater than anything I may be going through. For creativity, I am the creator of my life's path. My thoughts are powerful, and I create my world. Therefore, I think the best and expect the best at all times. And for harmony, God's love is the greatest power in the universe. I use this power of love to harmonize all my relationships and affairs, and I am grateful. We give thanks for the opportunity to pray with all of these dear ones, and to know that for those that are praying independently, those prayers are heard by God just as well as these are. And so it is. Amen. Our daily word today is being read by Joanne Bauman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Our message for today is about kindness.
Wait 1 second. Go. Start again.
I flow with divine love as I give and receive kindness. The word kindness triggers feelings of warmth, connection, and love in my heart. I smile as I recall ways that friends, family members, and others have shown me kindness. I feel again the gratitude and blessing I experienced in those moments. Gratitude, love, and a beautiful awareness of connection fill my heart and mind in a remarkably similar way when I remember the kindnesses I have shared. The movement of electrons through a wire creates a current and a flow. As kindness moves from person to person, it creates a flow of divine love. Both giving and receiving are essential to this current of love, so I look for opportunities to share acts of kindness. I welcome with a grateful heart the kindness others share with me. And from Micah chapter 6, verse 8, it says, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?" And so it is.
Thank you, my dear. We prepare now for special music by our own Bob Dylan, Kevin Reger.
Good morning. I tried to pick a couple of my songs that reflect what Mary will be talking about today. And this first one is called Faith. Faith, reach your hands to the sky. Faith, you won't know till you try. Take a little mustard seed and plant it in a row. Then before you know it, a tree will start to grow. With faith, it's time that we start faith. Let it live in your heart. Take your hands off the wheel. Put your life on autopilot. God will take control. You can trust that He will fly it. Well, yes, I know sometimes it's hard to give up the reins and put God in charge. But we can't control what we can't see. So let life unfold naturally. With faith, take that first step today. Faith, start to trust when you pray. Faith can fill your life like leaven in the bread. You can free yourself from worry if you have faith instead. Yes, faith, reach your hands to the sky. Faith, you won't know till you try. Faith can fill our lives like water in a fountain. We can move that hill even if it is a mountain. Well, yes, I know sometimes it's hard to give up the reins and put God in charge. There's so much that we can't see, so let life unfold naturally. With faith, it's time that we start faith. Let it live in your heart, even on a cloudy day. We know the sky is blue. High above the clouds, the sun is shining on you. So faith, reach your hands to the sky. Faith, you won't know till you try. Take a little mustard seed and plant it in a row. Then before you know it, a tree will start to grow. If you have faith.
Woo!
Thank you.
Good one, Kev. Okay, so if I'm not in focus, it's my own fault because I didn't do the camera right. But hopefully everything is working right. Okay, so we continue on our series on mastery, on the journey. And one of the things that drew me to Unity is its practicality. I would sit in the church on Sunday and listen to the ministers talk, and I would hear something go, oh, yes, I can use that, and I'd quick write it down. And then I would work all week to figure out, how am I going to use this? How can I apply this? How can this help me be a better version of me? And I love that about Unity. And, you know, it's also true that you can hear something a million times, and then somebody uses a different inflection or maybe different vocabulary, and all of a sudden it opens your eyes like for the first time that you've ever heard it. Or someone says something in a little bit different way, and it's like a zinger to you. You just get it. Well, that happens with this book too. And some of the things that are said may sound like something you've heard before, maybe even in a Unity gathering. So don't be surprised. As we continue with the book, and I'm reminding you that the author, George Leonard, is coming from a little different perspective. He is a black belt Aikido master, and he is a Zen Buddhist practitioner. But the way that he speaks and the things that he says could very much be very similar to things you've heard in Unity. And I like that. But he opens this chapter with these words. The human individual is equipped to learn, to go on learning prodigiously from birth to death. And that's exciting and precisely what sets him or her apart from all other known forms of life. He says man has been defined at various times as a building animal, a working animal, a fighting animal. But all of these definitions are incomplete and finally false. For man is a learning animal, and the essence of the species is encoded in that simple term. Man is a learning being. I like that. Man is a learning being. Man is always learning. Humankind is always learning because we are always growing. We evolve and we change. And so there are 5 master keys that we're going to look at today. I'm going to tell you what they are, and then we'll go through and build on them a little bit. The first master key is instruction. Instruction. The second one is practice. And you know how I love that word, practice. The third master key is surrender. The fourth is intentionality. And the fifth is the edge. So let's look at that first master key, instruction. You know, there are so many things that you and I can learn to do on our own. And now probably more than ever, because you can go to your computer and Google how to learn how to do anything. And there will be a videotape teaching you how to do that thing, from plumbing to sewing to just about anything you can imagine. Mark watches a lot of how-to videos, and usually I find them quite mind-numbing, but they're good to fall asleep to. But I was watching one with him a week or so ago about a group of guys that are building a wooden sailing vessel from scratch, the old master's way. And it is so interesting, and all the steps they have to go to. And of course, they have to create tools because they don't have those old-fashioned tools. And the way that they mold the wood, the whole thing is very complicated, extremely time consuming, labor intensive. But the result after a couple of years, and that's how long it took them, was sheer beauty, absolute mastery, magical, just beautiful. But there are other things that we try to learn, and we need a good instructor. And so if you're wanting to learn, say, Aikido, you want to find the best possible instructor you can. And what master Aikido people tell us is that you don't just find a good teacher, you want to know the lineage of that teacher. You want to know the lineage of that practice. That's very much the same in Buddhism, and it's the same in Hinduism and lots of other things. But it's not just about the teacher or the teacher's teacher, it's about the student. It's about looking at the students of that teacher to see how are they growing? How are they changing? What are their attitudes while they're in class? How do they act as they're leaving? How do they act as they're arriving? So a lot of it is about the responsibility of being a good student, committed to learning. I think I've always said I want to be a lifelong learner. And if I could get paid for going to school, I'd be there every day the rest of my life. I find it challenging, exciting. I love to argue and discuss ideas with others. It's a wonderful thing. One of the things that is always interesting to me is that, you know, young people go through high school and then they may go on through college and they may go to grad school, and they have this idea sometimes that once I'm through with formal education, that's it. I'm done. I am done. And nothing could be further from the truth, because we are learning and growing all the time. We are changing all the time. So as an example, the newest version of George Leonard's book, Mastery, now has a subtitle. I got to read you what the subtitle is. It says, The Keys to Success and Lifelong Fulfillment. So that's pretty impressive. I would pick up that book, certainly. So the way that we want to keep on learning is to keep being interested in education. And it's so strange to me the number of times that I've talked with people who balk at the idea of paying for a seminar or paying for a book that will actually help them learn and grow, that will keep them on the path. And yet they'll easily invest money in other things. So what he's writing about in instruction is that we want to keep on keeping on. And it's an important thing for all of us to do. And it's an important thing because we are always at a new place. So even if it's a teaching that we've heard before, we are at a new place in our personal consciousness. And the teaching will mean something a little different to us. We will take it in at a different level. One of my favorite movies, which you may think is kind of strange, is The Karate Kid. You remember The Karate Kid? Wax on, wax off, right? Well, that movie has been a favorite of mine for many, many reasons. But one of the main reasons is the very mindful instruction that Mr. Miyagi gives to Daniel-san. And Daniel-san, he's a kid. At first, it's like work. I don't like this. I don't want to do this. But he begins to realize that what he's being prescribed to do or taught to do is something that will help fulfill his desire to be good at his martial art, which in this case is karate. So it's a matter of learning, but it's a relationship. It's yes, the one who's been further on the path imbues knowledge to us, gives us tips, helps us to grow. But our part of that relationship is a dynamic, organic thing. It's about how are we in our terms of learning. In a book called The Zen Mind, Master's Beginning Mind, the Zen master Suzuki writes about fast, slow learners. You heard that right. Fast, slow learners. Let me read from the book. This is what he writes. In our scriptures, it is said that there are 4 kinds of horses: excellent ones, good ones, poor ones, and bad ones. The best horses will run slow or fast, left or right, depending on the driver's will. It moves with swiftness before it sees the shadow of the whip. The second best horse will run as well as the first, just before the whip reaches its skin. The third one will run when it feels pain on its body. And the fourth one will run after the pain penetrates to the marrow of its bones. You can imagine how difficult it is for the fourth one to learn to run. We listen to that story, and all of us want to be the best horse, right? I mean, don't we? But if not the best, at least the second best. And this is what the Master Suzuki says. You want to be the best, but that might be a mistake. When you learn too easily, you are tempted not to work hard and not to let the lesson penetrate to the marrow of your practice. And I would add, sometimes when things come too easily, they're often easily forgotten. So think about the best, worst thing that ever happened in your life. And you may have more than one or two, but think about one of those best, worst things that's happened in your life. If you were able to pull a lesson from it, and I'm affirming that you were, it probably feels like it went right to the marrow of your bones, does it not? It went right into the deepest part of you, to your deepest core. And what I dare to say that it's also true is that learning something in this way is something no one or no thing can ever take away from you. It was learning through pain, through suffering, through sheer determination to come out on the other side stronger, better, and changed. The second key is practice. And you've all heard that little joke. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. As you know, in the way that we say this word practice, we're thinking of the word as being a verb, to practice. We're talking about an action, right? A verb. But Leonard suggests an interesting twist on the word practice. He says, and I quote, "For one who is on the mastery journey, the word is better conceived of as a noun, not something you do, but something you are. In this sense, the word is akin to the Chinese word Dao or the Japanese word To, both of which literally mean road or path. For the master, no matter what the master is practicing in, no matter what they are practicing for, they devote themselves to the practice, not just to get better at it. They devote themselves to the practice for the sheer love of the practice itself." Sit with that for a moment. For the sheer love of the practice itself. Think about the spiritual practice of mindfulness or meditation for a moment. Some people enter into the learning of meditation with a definite goal in mind. I want to become illumined. Okay. But some people, yes, they want to be enlightened, but they enter into that practice and they do their practice not so much to get somewhere, but they are doing it because they enjoy the practice of it. What Leonard is suggesting is it's a nuance and a deeper insight that while the master may be interested in getting better and reaching some milestones along the way, the master loves the practice of the practice. He loves the process. The master will sit in meditation, if meditation is what they're wanting to get better at, for the sheer love of the experience. And whatever good comes as a result of that is just like icing on the cake. My friend Wendy is an ice skater. And the cool thing about Wendy is she wanted to be an ice skater from the time she was a little person. However, ice skating was not in their family budget. It just wasn't. And so as she grew up and became a young woman and had a career and money of her own, she decided to take up ice skating. Now she's in her mid-40s. She takes up ice skating, and I would sometimes go and sit with her. I would sit watching her because there was so much joy that she just exuded joy when she could conquer a new move or a new figure, a new pattern, a jump. I mean, it was just, your whole body smiled watching her. And it was so exciting to see her do that. And the interesting thing about Wendy is that, and it's probably true of all of us, we accomplish something that we've been working at, and suddenly we feel like we've got the world by the tail. We're ready for the next hardest thing, right? We're ready to move on. And her instructor is, and it's so funny, her instructor is like 20 years younger than her. Her instructor, though, is very wise because she's will say, well, that's great, but now we're going to go back to basics. And Wendy, the first few times, says, what do you mean basics? I just landed a whoop-de-doo, whatever it was called. And they have funny names if you haven't noticed. I just landed that. Now, why would I want to go backwards? I want to go forwards. But the person who knows that going backwards solidifies and improves and empowers that foundation. For skaters, it's the stroke, it's the confidence in the being on the different edges of your blade for different moves. And the more that you go back to the basics and you practice those things, whatever new complicated thing you're going to do looks that much better. And that's kind of what happens. But it's not the first thing we think about. What we think about is, I want to just keep going, and I want to just get better and better and do more and more things. Well, it's a process of refining. It's a process of refining your skill level, your ability. And one of the things I always like is when students will talk to their Aikido sensei, their instructor. Sensei, how long will it take for me to become a master? And they all have the same answer, which I just love. And the answer is, how long do you expect to live? In other words, it's a process. It's a process, and you learn to enjoy the process, the journey, more than a destination that you think is out there. So it doesn't matter whether it's becoming a martial art black belt, or the best teacher you can be, or the most wonderful parent, or any profession or any skill in any other sport. That's immaterial. The what of it is immaterial, because it's the principles and the practice that are the same for all. The third key, and this one is hard for a lot of people, they don't like the word, is surrender. Surrender. Leonard writes, the courage and the mastery is measured by his or her willingness to surrender. This means surrendering to your teacher and the demands of your discipline, whatever it may be. It also means surrendering your hard-won proficiency from time to time in order to reach a higher level of proficiency. And I think sometimes that we have such a difficult time with that word surrender is that we've been taught to believe that it means giving up. And nobody wants to give up. But I think it means something greater. I think it's something more subtle. I think it means to yield, giving way to knowing that there is always an ebb and flow in life, in everything. It doesn't matter what. So to every learning and every accomplishment, there is an ebb and the flow, and being able to yield to that without fighting it, I think is the ultimate blessing there. Most of us that are reasonable know that when we take up something new that we want to learn, whether it's a skill or a practice or whatever, that in the beginning we might be a little klutzy. We might look a little uncoordinated. We might be a little inept. We might think that we want to sing a certain song, and we know that we can hit that high note, but we don't quite. And yet, if we continue in our practice, our mastery will grow, and we get into the flow of it. So what Leonard's pointing out here, and what's absolutely true, is that the master knows there's going to be those times that our hard-won proficiency seem to disappear, and that we're giving up ground, is what it feels like, that we feel like we're somehow reverting back. And yet, as I said, watching my friend Wendy progress, she would learn something and master something, and she would do it 100 times in a row for the sheer joy of doing it. Yes, there were moments that she thought, okay, got that one, let's move on. And her instructor would say, no, we go back to basics now. So For the one who knows that sometimes we have to surrender a particular gain for a moment to go back and make the foundation even stronger. That is the key, that key. The fourth key is the idea of intentionality. Now, for those of us who've been around Unity and New Thought, who are metaphysical readers and interpreters, metaphysical thinkers, we know so much about intentionality. We know that we're not, doesn't matter what the what is, but we know that with intentionality, we are putting our whole selves, our whole being into whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish, to put our mind to the task at hand, to put our whole self into it. There's tremendous power when we're able to access that power through our intentionality, through holding in mind a specific intention. Our whole mindset, our whole consciousness, our whole being goes into that thing. Leonard gives us an example in the book, but I want to share with you an example that I observed and learned from when I went to sit and watch my granddaughter at her martial arts. The building was kind of big and it was kind of an L shape so that there could be different classes going on in different parts of the building. And yes, I was watching her, but I was also watching the class of students who clearly were very advanced. And one of the students in that class was named David, and he was a neighbor to Lena's. So my daughter would often be taking him to his lesson when she was taking Lena. So David was 16 years old and very determined, very accomplished in his practice, certainly not a black belt. But he and one or two other boys around his age were invited to participate in an advanced, I guess you'd say, seminar group with some very accomplished students, some who were black belts, and he felt very honored. So I'm watching him more than I'm watching Lena, but he asked for two students to come forward. He actually called David by name and Jason, an adult man, and they came out. And one of the things that he had told the students before they started is that you are not to discuss what you learned here today with those students who are newer, who are beginning on the path, because they will get confused. And he was talking about the spiritual part of the practice of Aikido, which is, it's like nonviolence. I know it sounds surprising, but it is. It's nonviolence. It's learning when to be aggressive, but mostly learning how to use the energy of an aggressor. But that there are times when one must be aggressive. So he has David and Jason, the man, standing there, and Jason's to put his arm down to his side, which he does. And David, with two hands, is supposed to keep his arm down, not let him raise his arm up above his head. Well, they struggle and struggle and struggle, but within a minute, probably, maybe no more than two, Jason's got his arm straight up. And you can just look at David and you can just see his shoulders fall, and he walks, bows, walks back to his place in the group. And then the sensei, the teacher, calls him out and he takes him aside. And of course, this is what I learned later from David, not at the time he's doing it. And he says to David, so now everything has changed. Now, Jason is your very best friend. He's a friend that you've known forever. You love him dearly. But Jason is hurting, and he has a gun in his hand. And if he's allowed to raise that gun to his head, he's going to take his own life. You cannot let that happen. And then the sensei walked away. In a moment or two after David kind of digested that and felt like that was real, he went back, and Jason's standing there like this with his arm down to his side, and David is looking at him, and visualizing a gun in that hand, and he grabs hold of Jason's arm just like he did before, two hands, and they struggle and they struggle and they struggle, but Jason can never raise his arm above his waist. So after a few minutes, the sensei says, enough, quit. And then he explains to everyone else in the group, including Jason, what he had told David. And then he said to David, how did that feel? And David said, it was amazing. He said, I was practicing tough love because I did not want this friend to hurt himself or kill himself. And he had an intention, did he not? He was filled with an intention that strengthened him to do what he needed to do. And he said, I practiced tough love. In a sense, they said, no, not tough love. You practice love. And that's what we should all be doing. Whoa, pretty neat, huh? So clearly, we see that intention makes all the difference. Makes all the difference. I'd venture to say that David's wholehearted intentionality was what gave him that added strength to keep Jason from raising his hand to his head. He'd been told that his dear friend was depressed, had a gun, and wanted to take his own life. And yet the same 16-year-old kid that couldn't do it before to this adult man, suddenly motivated by love and motivated by caring, was able to save his life. Intentionality. You can see the mechanics of something is just the surface level of it. What is our intention? Is our intention to become a master communicator in relationships? Or do we intend to become the very best teacher or professor that we can be, or the finest musician, or the greatest athlete, or the most renowned chef? What is our motivation? But moreover, what is our intention? It makes all the difference in the world. It is the heart of what true mastery is all about. And then the fifth key is called the edge. And what Leonard brings out in his book about the edge is this. When exploring the path of mastery together, it's clear we have emphasized the consistency of practice, the motivation of practice, the steadiness of practice, the non-attachment, and to a certain degree, non-attachment to the end result, the doing of it. But we've enjoyed whatever comes from the doing of it. Like everything that is deeply spiritual, it lives within the context of contradiction and paradox. Think about that for a minute. It lives within the context of contradiction and paradox. It's the ability to embrace the endless goal on the practice and the plateau, and yet to test the edges of the envelope, to push the edge of the envelope, to be willing to put yourself right to the edge and see now how much further can you possibly go. And that's the paradox, the contradiction, I think. I was thinking about this paradox and contradiction, and I remember, I think it was 2 years ago that the Hawaiian Ironman triathlon was going on, and the women's division was being led by a 23-year-old woman, pretty much a girl, Julie Moss. She was ahead in every event, and we're down to the final piece of the triathlon, which is the running, and she is way out there ahead. And it's looking very, very positive for her. And then, very close to the end, maybe 100 yards away, which doesn't seem close, but in a 25-mile race, it's pretty close. She stumbles and she falls. She's leading, and she stumbles and falls. She gets up, runs a few more steps, falls again. She's down. She's having a hard time getting back up. She gets up, she runs a few more steps and falls down again. And she's really struggling to get back up. And pretty soon, the second person that was behind her, the closest one to her, passes her up and runs across the finish line. And Julie gets herself up, and within seconds, she manages to reach across the finish line and finish and passes out. Now, some would say that was the stupidest thing in the world. Why would she even do that? And others would say, what a mighty example of pushing to the absolute edge for the sheer experience of the path and the practice itself. I am certainly not suggesting that you do as Julie has done, but I do agree with Leonard's point that the idea of mastery includes not just an either or, rather a both and. Not just an either or, but a both and. And so this week, as you look at your own life and you explore where it is you want to grow, what area of your life is that in, you need to explore these 5 keys or these 5 elements. And you need to consider strongly the type of instruction that you want. And to realize that it's not going to happen overnight. Anything worthwhile doesn't generally. So it will take practice, and there will be a desire at some point for you to push yourself a little beyond what you've known in the past. Where do you want to show up in all of this? If you're a regular part of our community, our spiritual community, you know that our mission is to transform lives and heal our world with love. Because we know that everything starts with the individual, but cannot end with the individual. We are designed to learn and grow. And I hope that when you look at things this week and you look at this time of uncertainty, this time of living in this pandemic, what is it doing to you individually, to your own psyche? It's time to learn and keep on learning and do the very best you can. And for heaven's sakes, be gentle with yourself if you stumble and fall, because we all do. We all do. Maybe not physically on the floor, but we do make mistakes. We do make errors, even though we have already started training our thinking, training our responses. We do sometimes make mistakes. But know that there's people you can reach out to, people who love you and support you, people here in this community. If we're not here to answer the phone, we will return your call. You can reach us. We will reach out to you. I've always advised people having prayer partners, and I think in this time we need them more than ever. But if you don't have one, and I cannot reach you, I invite you to call Silent Unity at World Headquarters. There are people there 24/7 answering the phone, answering emails, there to be a connection, to connect with you in prayer and in consciousness. They're not in a hurry. They're there to connect and support you. So always know you have that option. But you can always reach out. It may not be comfortable, but it's the best way because other people are not mind readers. You need to reach out to let them know what it is you want and need. That, my friends, is the truth. Namaste. So we prepare for meditation, and you've been sitting a bit, so you may wish to wiggle a little bit and take a couple of deep breaths to center yourself, but also to wake up your senses and your body as we turn within. We devote our time of quiet and attention to nurturing and renewing through the silence. We breathe in a way of clearing our cluttered brain and settling into peaceful stillness. We connect with our intact spiritual nature, which is wholeness, wellness, well-being, and recognizing our oneness with God, we affirm our oneness with all others as we continue in the silence. I am reminded of a wonderful old Jewish story that tells of a rabbi who asked his disciples, "How do you know when night is giving way and the morning is coming?" One of the followers stood and said, "Teacher, won't you know that night is fading when through the dim light you can see an animal and recognize whether it is a sheep or a dog?" The rabbi said, "No." "Rabbi," asked another, "won't you know that light is coming when you can see clearly enough to distinguish whether a tree is a fig tree or an olive tree?" "No," responded the rabbi. "You will know that light has passed when you can look at any man and any woman and discern that you are looking at a brother or a sister. Until you can see with that clarity, the night will always be with us." The night has been long. And isn't it time for dawn to break? No matter who we are, no matter what religion we profess, isn't it time for us to see one another as sisters and brothers, the sisters and brothers that we really are, all of us? Only then will we know that night has passed and a new day has dawned. Hold this story in your mind and heart. Hold it in the silence. Allow the truth of it to resonate within your being and to circulate it to every aspect of your body temple. Every cell and atom is awakened by the idea of living in a world of oneness. Brothers and sisters in the family of God, with all people we meet, not just those that look like us, not just those that talk like us, not just those who are the same gender that we are, not just those who agree with us, but all people are our brothers and sisters in the family of God. If you've been feeling uneasiness, tension, and stress over some of the rhetoric that is heard through the media, I invite you to set it aside, to withdraw your energy from that negativity and focus your energy and your intention on knowing and living our oneness with God and with all others, every man and woman as a brother and sister of ours, my brother and sister, my sisters and brothers in the family of God. Rest in the silence. Gently allow yourself to become aware of the place that you're sitting. Become aware of your surroundings. We say thank you, God, for this opportunity to be together in prayer and meditation. We give thanks for the revelation of new understanding. And so we say, Amen. And so it is. At this time, I invite you to take the gift that you wish to give. And no, we're not passing a basket here or to your home, but there are options for giving. One is a button to give, has been newly installed on Facebook, and I believe on the web page as well. But we will give you other options after we bless our gifts together. There is no lack or limitation. Freely I give, and freely I receive from God's abundance. I am blessed as I give, and unity is blessed in receiving. Thank you, God. We're going to prepare for another musical gift from Kevin. Kevin's wearing 3 hats today: musician, PowerPoint, and camera.
All right. So I'm sure that some of you can remember Reverend Patty Pippiah. She spoke here quite a lot before Reverend Mary made Unity Center her home. And she had a very distinctive preaching style. And I remember one day, it's about 8 years ago, she stopped in the middle of her talk. She put her hands on her hips and she said, "God is not a hobby, people." I thought, she's right. God is not a hobby. And I thought, I have to put some of that energy into a song. God is not a hobby. God's a full-time gig. God is not a hobby. God is really big. God is not a hobby. God's a full-time vision. God is not a hobby. God's a way of living. Yes, every day, God is the way. If we don't look for guidance, we will go astray. When we're distracted, the ego makes us pay. Instead of staying grounded every day. God is not a hobby. God is ever near. God is not a hobby. God's not some veneer. God is not a hobby. God's a full-time vision. God is not a hobby. God's a way of living. God's a way of living. In meditation, we can center on his voice. In meditation, we are guided to good choice. In meditation, we live in God's graceful power. In meditation, we can bring God's love to flower. God is not a hobby. God is always rocking. God is not a hobby. God is ever knocking. God is not a hobby. God's a full-time vision. God is not a hobby. God, a way of living. If we're distracted, this world can get us down. It's not too hard to let this old world turn us around. If we're not careful, we'll be turning upside down. We have to focus or we'll be temptation bound. God is not a hobby. God is not a hobby. God is not a hobby. God's a full-time vision. God is not a hobby. God's a way of living.
Woo! That's such
Thank
a good one. Good one. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so I have a few announcements. The first one is many of you won't know this person, but there are those who were around. Is when Dorothy Lang was very, very active in this ministry. She was one of the spiritual centers of this ministry. Um, she made her transition on Friday at the age of 102 with the COVID. Now we know she had other health issues, but the COVID is what pushed her over. But we give thanks for her good run, all the wonderful things she did as a part of Unity. And it was her husband, Howard, who carved our beautiful wings and the Unity script underneath it. And those wings will stay up as long as I'm here. I so appreciate that. She led the silent Unity prayer service here at Unity for years and years and years, and was really really loved. So we bless her in her homegoing. The next announcement that I have is that next Sunday, right after service, there will be a few minutes break, and then we have our No Bake Sale fundraiser, also known as the Sound Voyage. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? A sound voyage with Catherine Rambo, and she'll be playing her beautiful antique Tibetan bowls as she shares her talents with us here at Unity Center. Now, this is a virtual event. Those that do come on Sunday, and there's very few, are of course welcome to stay in the chapel. So the admission to this virtual event is whatever amount you normally spent in donating baked goods or in buying things to take home. Um, So we really appreciate your bake sale for your no bake sale fundraiser. We appreciate your contributions and we say thank you in advance. The next announcement is that this is the new book we will be studying beginning December the 3rd, the first Thursday in December. And this book we chose specifically because we want to be living in peace. We want to be coming from a place of peace and loving kindness and visualizing that we are a healing presence in the community, in our state, and in the world. And it's so needed right now. So if you'd like to join us, I still have some books available. Contact me. The book is $16 even. That's because Kevin got a special deal, and so I'm grateful for that. It retails for $25.99, so nice discount there. And so I still have some books, and also then I will give you the instructions to join the Zoom class. That's how we do this class. We do it together as a Zoom meeting, and it's working very, very well. And we have a great facilitator in Reverend Pat Schlick. Kevin is also a co-facilitator in that group. So please think about becoming part of the group. You do it from your home, but you become part of a group. You get to see the people and talk with them, and it's a very good feeling. And particularly right now when we really can't be together much, it's especially helpful to be able to interact with discussing the ideas of the book. So I invite you to do that. We're going to say the words to America the Beautiful as a prayer before we close with our prayer for protection. So I had called Karen Stogood and Karen Taylor Good and Stowe Daly, and reminded them to send this to our new president-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. So I feel so strongly that these words have such healing power. Will you join me? Oh, beautiful, compassionate shores where dreams and hope are born, where kindness and civility can weather any storm. America, America, God heal this great divide. Let fear release, rekindle peace, till all our hearts unite. You and me, from sea to shining sea. And so it is. And our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and so it is. Amen. If you haven't been by our center in some time, it looks quite different. All of the overgrown bushes have been removed. We have lots of new things planted and room for other new things to come in through the fall and the spring. So with great blessings, we say, God bless you richly wherever you are. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Goodbye.